This is Steve Weiner. I used to write for the David Letterman Show. This is Mike Chisholm, who spent his entire life dreaming of being on the David Letterman Show and will never happen. Watch his podcast instead. La, 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 la.
Welcome once again to the Letterman Podcast. My name is Mike Chisholm. Okay, Jay Ryan's come back. And for those who have listened to or watched this show, first and foremost, thank you. We appreciate that very much. Like, share, subscribe, all of that crap. But Jay is, of course, our community, the community that we're building here with the Letterman Podcast that is steadily growing. And it's so cool to see that happen. We're 2.5 years in, getting close to 3 years. This in 2025, we'll have the 3-year anniversary of this thing. And our community is really, really important. And I love that. Jay Ryan has been there from the very beginning. He was part of, he was an architect in this show, whether he likes it or not. No. And I say that kind of glibly, but I love this guy. I feel like he's a brother from another mother. And, relationships with brothers, they have all sorts of different facets to them. My relationship with Jay is just like that. We haven't caught up in a while. And, not just, his Letterman stories are fantastic. Not just because of the stealing of the microphone and all that sort of stuff. The fake intern story is still one of the most precious stories to me of Letterman lore, of that he worked for, as a fake intern for Worldwide Pets for a few weeks. He's told that on previous episodes. In the car community, Good Vibes Breakfast Club, you can follow Jay at Porsche Life 111, and then of course he is the host of on the Late Night Playset. He's got Dave's Old Set, and it's such a I love his show because it was a show that he would do with his wife as she was going through MS, Nicole. And we lost Nicole not too long ago. This is Jay's second appearance, I think, since we lost her, and it's the first time we've caught up in a while. He went on a trip across America after she passed away, and I highly recommend checking out the Instagram, where he went to all sorts of different places within pop culture on this journey that he took. But we get together, we catch up. The first thing we talk about, of course, is the LA fires. He's down right in the heart of it. The night of the worst night of the LA fires, when things were really happening. I mean, he sent me a video from his patio, watching a new fire start up in Studio City, and it's just we talk about that and how things are affected in LA right now. He goes through a lot of that stuff. We of course talk about some Letterman stuff. He spent some time yesterday at Jay Leno's garage, and we go through some of the different things that have been happening in the Letterman universe. We catch up. It's just a great conversation with one of the founding members of the Letterman Podcast community. Letterman Podcast has one sponsor only, and that is hello-deli.com. Go to hello-deli.com for official Late Show with David Letterman merchandise, like mugs and hats and shirts and all that sort of stuff. You can also go to the official Letterman store as well. Yeah, I'm just really, really happy to catch up with my friend, Jay Ryan. I hope you enjoy being part of the conversation. Yeah, that's actually one thing I want to start this thing with, Jay Ryan. I'm so happy to see you. We're both turning into old men at the same time, and we haven't compared notes, and simultaneously there are two things happening. Both have the beards. I love the beard, and I don't know when you're going to pull the trigger and get rid of the beard, but I love it.
I did it already. I'm sorry. I did it yesterday.
Oh, it's trimmed. That's the trimmed
This is
version.
whatever's. Yeah, it was a big, huge, bushy mess. But then I went over to Jay Leno's garage yesterday, so I didn't want to look like crazy. And then also we had Magnus on the show last night, Magnus Walker, who has a giant beard. So no matter what I had next to him, it would have been inferior. So I just figured I'd buzz it down to whatever the normal 3 is, or whatever this Don Johnson look is.
Well, you look great. Here's the other thing. They haven't arrived yet. I've still got the glasses that you have met me with, and I've used, but in a few days, my progressives, my bifocals arrive, and that is happening. I know, same thing with you. We're losing the battle of vision when it comes to aging right now. You're going through the same thing.
I am. It's harder in the studio. It's not so bad just walking around.
Yep.
I mean, I'm okay right now,
mm-hmm.
but somehow when you're in the studio and all the lights are in your eyes, then I can't read the phone or anything. I'm doing all this. For me, it was on the trip was on the road trip. I visited my aunt in Pennsylvania, and she saw me doing, the 40 reach or 50 reach or whatever, however age you are.
Yep.
She goes, just do me a favor and try these. And I did. And I was like, God damn it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I needed them. I probably needed them a few years ago. I don't
Yep.
need them all the time, but sometimes usually when I'm fatigued, if I've been on the phone too much,
Yep.
or in the case of the road trip, I was just driving with that 1,000-yard stare, looking out at the horizon for
Yep.
X amount of hours a day.
Yep.
And then you get into your hotel room and you try to look at your phone and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah. I had been getting by with zooming things on my phone, whether it was on the Kindle or whether it was, being able to zoom things, and I was kind of getting by. But then I got the Zemi book, the Carson the Magnificent, and reading it, and I wanted to inhale the book, and I'm used to being able to do that when a book that I love comes out, or want to love, I inhale it, and I could not do it, and that was what made me, oh, okay, let's get them checked, and sure enough, yep. You're an old man, Mike. You're getting the bifocal. Here we go. And they'll be here in a couple of days. So I'm very excited about that because then I can read again. It's really good to see you.
It's good to see you too. And your old
Yeah.
glasses.
And my old glasses. Before we get into anything here, and I appreciate very, very much. I haven't watched Magnus's episode yet, but Phil, you and Phil, I thought did a really amazing, thoughtful job talking about the state of LA, where I'm from. We've been through the fires. We've had,
Yeah.
not 12,000, but we're also, much smaller populace wise. Hundreds and hundreds of structures have burned in my area. There's a fire season where I live. We know what it's like. Last week, watching your episode with him, I thought you captured all the feelings. I had a bunch of PTSD feelings of how you, everything from the survivor's guilt to just the cloud of energy that hangs over after a natural disaster happens like this. Where we are right now, on the 30th of January, how are things in LA right now from a fire perspective? Are things under control? What's the mood? Is it still more of the same?
No, I mean it's a saga, right? Because none of us we were on the air 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday night doing a show. We didn't
Yep.
know what was going to be, but I was just on the air talking to people, and sure enough, there was breaking news. So I covered it like we were the news. It was kind of crazy. I saw it in the background, so every once in a while I just kind of throw to it.
Yep.
And we were watching the start of this thing that none of us knew would become like a 3 week long saga.
Yeah.
In LA, it sort of felt like COVID a little bit, where it was kind of like everything was fine and then it wasn't, and now we don't know what to do. That sort of was a little bit of PTSD. We've had a little bit of rain and snow up in the higher elevations
Yep.
since all of this, so that has helped obviously
Yep.
a bit. It's helped peace of mind. I think it's helped the energy around here. I think it's helped take people's stress level down when it's happening, whether or not it's your town, when it's happening in all these strange places and pockets, there was no rhyme or reason to it. So while you weren't on fire or evacuating right now, that didn't mean you wouldn't be in 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It was a weird, everybody was on edge. And I would say that that's probably gone away a bit. But for the people who have suffered losses, that's what we were trying to say is not gone. That energy is felt everywhere because of the sheer number. I don't care how many millions of people are in LA. When you lose 10,000, 12,000, whatever it is, however many thousands of structures, homes, everybody knows someone.
Yep.
Everyone is affected somehow, if not directly, indirectly. So it's strange. There was, I don't know, after maybe 5 days of like, you're glued to it. It was just like COVID, where it was like all you had to, you could only stay home and watch TV to figure out what was going on out there.
Mm-hmm.
Or I would go out to the pool deck, and it's a 360 view of the San Fernando Valley, so you've got all of the hills and all the surrounding. So I was like, oh, there's the Palisades one. Oh, there's the Eaton one. Oh, there's the Hollywood. There's the Studio City one.
Mm-hmm.
It was very, very strange, but you couldn't do anything about it. You just had to kind of stay put. I don't know. It's a terrible time. I think because of social media and because of good vibes and car community and stuff like that, I know a lot more people than I ever have in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And dozens isn't enough. It's somewhere between 50 and 100 people that I know that have lost everything.
Yep.
One home, multiple homes, garage with cars, businesses. It's kind of crazy. And then after like 5 days of that craziness, I went down to San Diego to go see Nicole's brother was in town.
Mhm.
And that's only a couple hours away. So I made sure to go see them despite the situation. And then you get out of town and it's like business as usual.
Yeah.
I mean, it was on the news down there, but like
Mhm.
you could go outside, you couldn't smell the smoke. It was wild. Only a few hundred miles away. Crazy.
It's extremely isolating when it comes to that. We've gone through the same thing. In '03 we had a really bad one, and then 2 years ago again the same thing. And for us, it's happened in the tail end of the summer and then fall. And we talk about containment, and when the news cycle kind of ends and it moves on to something else, whatever everyone else is paying attention to, our reality is, oh no, this fire, okay, we may have the fire lines so people are safe, but it's not until winter that this fire will actually go out. Like it's going to be going for
Uh,
on and on. That's still
right.
happening. Like it's not like all these fires are out, but it's no longer raining ash. And
Yeah, I
and
think
and
the fires are out. I think the containment is sort it confuses some people. I actually had to ask some U.S. Forest Service firefighter friends to say, what is the deal? What does
Yep,
that mean?
yep.
They and we talked about this on the show last night. So if you watch the Magnus show, you'll hear again. But
Okay.
they apparently have to dig a trench around the entire perimeter of the fire in order to call it contained.
Yep.
So that number that we're watching, sometimes it goes up quickly, sometimes it goes up slowly, is manpower we're looking at. It really has less to do with the fire
Yep.
itself, the burning of the fire. It's more like an official designation of how they do things, which I was fascinated by. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you learn a lot. You
So
definitely learn a lot when stuff like this is happening. Um,
so all I meant by that was like we still may not be at zero contain or 100% containment, but
right.
I mean I think the fires are out. I don't know how they could have. We've got mudslides are our problem now, you know, because of all the rain and stuff last week, all
Ugh.
the precipitation, snow and rain.
And you think about the old Carson joke, the mudslides are putting out the fires.
Yeah, it's all I thought about. I can't make it anymore because one, politically correctness, plus nobody remembers Johnny Carson, which
Right.
is a total bummer for me.
Me too.
Living in the wrong generation.
Oh my gosh, me too. So put it in perspective. Is good vibe like we're on a Thursday night? We're recording this. Is good vibes happening tomorrow morning?
It is first one since though. So we've been out for what, a month, I guess.
It's going to be very interesting to see. Good vibes is this community that you have, and the energy there is so amazing. I
Mm.
believe that many people are going to be comforted, and it'll be a nice measure of support for many people having that event tomorrow.
I hope you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
I need it. They're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need it. There you go. Um, you're back on the air. Good late night playset is back on the air again,
Yeah,
and every Tuesday it's been happening. It's three weeks in a row. How's it feeling?
I think it's more than that. I think it's four. It's since I've been back in town. It's okay. I don't know what I'm doing. It feels like square one in some ways because the show that we were doing is no more.
Hmm.
There's no reason for it. It doesn't have a purpose. Yet I'm still here.
Hmm.
So the first one back was kind of talking about that. It's like
Hmm.
I don't need to be here anymore. This was originally for her, and then it turned into some uh, a deep-seated apology to David Letterman for some misgivings from my childhood. But Nicole's not here anymore, and I already said sorry, Dave. So I couldn't figure out why I would keep doing it.
Hmm.
So, but other people, whenever I would say that to a friend, they would always say, "Oh, well, you got to keep doing it."
Hmm.
And I said, but you love me. You're my friend. Like you, of course, you're saying that, but like,
Hmm.
what's the point of the thing?
Hmm.
Why do it? And so we posed that to the audience, and then it turned out that they needed it, and then that gave me some motivation because I used to do things for Nicole, and she's not here anymore, and I'm not motivated enough to do things for myself. Maybe motivated isn't the right word, but you know what I mean. I whether it's the self-loather deep inside me um, or the classic performers uh, uh, what do you call that when you have imposter syndrome?
Yep. Yep.
I think all of those things factor in. But if I'm doing something for somebody else, I have all of the motivation in the world, all of the energy. I can summon it from the universe to do something for somebody else. So that's where we're going with it. We're letting the audience tell us what we want to do or what we should do. I didn't say
I
that right. You know what I mean? The
I
audience will tell us what they want.
100%. Yeah. And I'm grateful for that. Really grateful that's happening for you for a variety of reasons. I think that the creative in you, I've watched your evolution as you have, both for the theme of the show, but also you. I feel like you really enjoy doing it if there's people out there who do appreciate. I think it's reciprocal to a point. I don't know. That's just me,
That's
my observation. Would you agree with that?
well, yeah, but it's another I think you said better what I was trying to say. Like I'm not as good behind the desk if it's for me because that
Yes.
who we've seen that story. We've heard that story.
Yes.
Like what move
Yes.
on? What's next?
Yeah.
But if the guy behind the desk is performing a service like the professionals do, whether it's entertainment, news, or
Hmm.
whatever their purpose is, then there's a reason to do it. Then
Hmm.
I'm motivated to be good at it. I'm motivated to put effort into it. I'm motivated to use my energy to make myself better, to be better for the audience,
Yeah.
um, the viewer. Um, I don't know. It's a work in progress, just like me. I'm back, but I'm not. My mind is still a mess. I don't know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So for somebody like our audience to say, but we want you to do this, and here's why, and not only is that good to hear, but it then sometimes spurs my creativity to then be like, oh, okay,
Hmm.
if that's the avenue you want, like maybe I can help. I can come up with more things down that path or whatever. I don't know. I
We have
really don't put much thought into it. That's the truth. Like this conversation is way more thought than I've ever put into it. Like it's sort of I treat our show like well, the shows without a guest, which
Mhm.
we're figuring that out.
Mhm.
The shows where it's just me and the audience talking to camera and going through comments and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Those are very interesting to me, and I treat those like stand up. Um, but what I mean by that is how I would do stand up. I treat those like stand up in that I'm not good with material. I'm not
Right.
good with what's the cadence and the pacing of this joke. I'm good with sharing a story. Come along with me on this ride. I guarantee it's going to take you places.
Mhm.
And that's what those, one-on-one shows feel like for me.
Mhm.
There's probably a little bit of prep done for the guest shows just because you got to figure out what the hell you're going to talk about. But you don't know what's going to happen, what people are going to bring on
Yep.
those one-on-one talk to camera shows, and that is very fascinating to me. It's not something we ever really leaned into. I joked about it a lot about
Mhm.
doing like a Frasier call-in show.
Yep.
Um, Not that I'm a psychiatrist, but just to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And it's funny if you joke about something enough, it seems to there's that word again, manifest itself in your life. It's true though.
Oh, it's a hundred.
What
Oh,
you
of course it is. You put it
what you
out there,
put
you get
out,
it back.
there you go.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's funny for me as a member of the audience who loves your show. Also, I always my take on it, and I haven't shared this take with you here because one of the things that you and I have kind of said, okay, let's say for the podcast, this kind of a thing, and I haven't said this to you, but to me, watching you and Nicole use the show as something to maybe tether to or a flag to be planted at, oh, we weren't doing well today, but we gathered it up for the show. And in the show, there was genuine laughter. There were genuine moments of insight where you both kind of rose up and brought yourselves out. The show was I don't know, a measure of support for you, but also the community who loves you, not just the audience that you've garnered and created here, but the GVBC audience and everybody loved that. It was one of those things. With her being gone, to me, and knowing also the future project that's happening, the ranch, and the idea that the playset will potentially, or a version of it will transform itself and reinvent itself up there. This is a
Yeah, or
neat
there'll be some show up there. I don't know.
yeah,
At this point, who
something.
knows if it'll be
Yeah.
the David Letterman set and whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
there'll be some kind of live podcasty thing up there.
Yeah, and this here, uh, the previous incarnation was so much about healing and dealing. Um, well, we love you, and to see you be able to heal and deal now, using this to me makes a lot of sense. Again, as somebody who loves you but loves the show as well, and then also to transition over to whatever the new normal is going to be there. To me, that just makes sense. So again, that's my 2 cents on it. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people have expressed similar sentiments.
I we talked about this a little bit on the show last night. I think for me, we're just a muscle, and you don't necessarily want to go to the gym or yoga or Pilates or whatever your workout of choice is. You may
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily want to go for a run,
Mm-hmm.
but when you do go to the gym, go to yoga, go to Pilates, go for the run, you inevitably feel better afterwards.
Yeah.
So it sort of feels like that. I made probably therapy. It's probably a little bit of therapy for me, especially those one-on-one shows, because while I tend to share a little bit about whatever I'm going through, really it's more about talking to the other people. And then sometimes that's nice to just know that you're not the only one with problems.
Yeah. Um, oh man, you're preaching to the choir on that one. The power of you're not alone. And I mean, the specific unique problems, okay, fine. It's situational for each person, but the commonality of you're not alone. Other people are
Oh,
going through stuff and things like that. No, it's all good. All good. Looks
I
gorgeous.
kicked the camera. Sorry.
But the idea that you're not alone is a powerful notion, sometimes even a life-saving notion. I'm not, being
Yeah.
hyperbolous when I say that. Like
No,
for
I
some
know.
people, that's a
Not in
huge
my case,
thing.
thank God. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there are. Yeah, you're right. I'd say for every suicide in the world ever, you wish there was something you could have done. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah, and people who are living that quiet life of desperation, sometimes the key to that right there is just knowing that you're not alone. You're not the only one going through this right now, and you can save yourself a lot of strife just with that one concept. And I'm certain that that your show has expressed that for people over and over and over again over the years. I know I certainly felt it every time I was part of it,
Um,
because people commenting and they would talk about, react. They would react to what Nicole was going through, that vulnerability, to what you were going through, the vulnerability of being the other side of that coin, and people would want to either open up or talk about the idea of the communal spirit, and that's what you have just done organically. The universe has just said, hey, Jay, you're a Pied Piper, you can build a community, and I think that's a strength of the communities that you build.
well, it's funny that you bring that up. Struggling with that lately. Um, I would say prior to the trip,
Mm-hmm.
I felt. I mean, it's no secret. Nicole was my better half. She was. If this thing is a team and we were each halves, it wasn't 50-50. She was the better half. I am aware of that. So I think that I was really struggling with, once there wasn't a Nicole and the team of whatever Jay, it's just the Jay show now.
Mm-hmm.
And when Jay was part of a show and the other partner was the stronger half, now it's just the weaker half show. I think I was afraid that they wouldn't be there anymore, maybe
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't like me as much. I don't know. Probably everything that you ever fear as a kid on the high school, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
I think all of that. And somewhere along this journey, it's come to light that, that's not the case, and that these supporters, the viewer, the GVPC attendee,
Mm-hmm.
um, the Instagram subscriber, whatever it happens to be,
Mm-hmm.
um, they seem to be getting something out of this relationship,
Yeah.
which, with just Jay, just the
Yeah.
weaker part. Um, I like to think that my beautiful wife, Nicole, God rest her soul. By the way, I said that earlier today for the first time, and I realized that those were not just words. That's real. I would like to think that she's giving me strength currently to make me better every day,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can be better for the viewer, the television audience,
Mm-hmm.
the Instagram subscriber, the GVP attendee. And so I'm trying. I want to be better. So
For our viewers or listeners who may not have heard any of your return shows or watched your return shows yet, I'll ask the question. I know the answer. She's still talking to you. She's still with you. She's still strong as ever.
yeah, I don't know how any of this works.
Yeah.
I still feel connected to her. Of course, I still talk to her. I mean, I still live in the same place. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like everything is a reminder.
Yeah.
And for the last, month, we've been somewhat cooped up here. I haven't been going out and doing as many things because we haven't had as many things to do. So yeah, I still talk to her all the time. I mean, I don't know if that says something about her being around or if that says something about me and the kind of person I am and what I believe. But yeah, I talk to her several times a day.
Yeah. She's, I guess, we've talked about this before. Is she still pranking you? Do you still feel her, almost mischievousness, that spirit there, or on the trip? This is one of the questions I wanted to ask, because that was very strong before the trip. And I'm curious if on the trip there were any measures of releasing the God rest your soul, like what you just said, God rest. Was there any releasing that happened on that trip as far as that was concerned?
I think I thought so a couple times.
Yeah.
First of all, I was gone a long time.
Yeah.
I
It
was
was like,
gone way longer than I thought I'd be,
yeah.
and uh, a month trip is plenty. That would be a long time, and I intended to be gone a month. I was gone like 2.5 weeks. It was 10 weeks. So yeah, it happened a bunch, but none of it was permanent because the moment I came back here, it all, you know,
Right.
so did the emotions. And I came back right before the holidays, literally a couple days before Christmas.
Yeah.
So after just spending Thanksgiving and her birthday with her parents and her family. So there's a lot to this. There's so many facets. It's like you can't unpack it on a podcast.
No.
You know what I mean? You'd need to do a podcast series just on this.
Yes. And perhaps a measure of what late night playset is now is that series, at least to a certain
Maybe, I don't
point.
know.
It feels well,
It's
especially
not what
the
I'm
alone
intending
shows.
to do, but
No, no. But I mean, how much of what has happened did you intend to do? I think one of the things
very
that,
little. That's
yeah,
that's one of the but I've been that way my whole life, and
yeah,
people have always sort of been like, "But why don't you plan?" And I say, "But what is the first thing you said to me that started this conversation? Wow, you've had such an amazing life." Right, it's because I live it that way. All in, on the edge, no net.
mm-hmm.
That's how I do things. I don't know another way. It is incredibly stressful sometimes.
Mm.
But I would imagine like a gambling addict, like, but when you get that payoff, ooh, it feels so good, and that's what you're doing it for. And the truth is, if you believe, then it does usually work out. Nothing's
Mm-hmm.
perfect, but it does usually work out. And that's how I do things.
Yeah. Um, so
One day
so
at a
the
time, man, more than ever before.
Well, and you take it, I mean, and we've talked about this before, both in private and probably on camera as well. When you go through the really tough stuff in life, the idea, the platitude of just take it one day at a time is one thing. Don't plan too much. Man plans, God laughs. All these adages, right? But then when it gets really, really hard, sometimes the idea that you're clinging to, not just taking it one day at a time, but maybe 1 hour at a time, or even 1 minute at a time, where I'm just going from moment to moment to moment. That is, again, something that I think is a testament to one of the messages you've always kind of put out there. Um,
That's a
and
lesson life taught us. So we preached it.
yeah.
That's
Are
when
you,
Nicole was alive, is how we figure, you know what I mean? That's just, we
Mhm.
had to survive moment to moment.
Yeah. But now that has, changed
Now that your
since
wife's dead, I
her
heard you.
passing. There it is. There's the dark humor, and all the episodes you've put out, the dark humor has been there, and that's
Oh, so that's probably her. I mean, I have that sense of humor too. That's why we hit it off. But I mean,
yeah,
like, she probably gives me the confidence to do the zinger in those cases because I
yep,
know she'd be okay with it. I know she'd be laughing. You'd
yeah,
hear the ha ha, from her on that one. She
yep,
thrived there. All of her old clients, live in that place. So
yep.
it's
Um,
comfortable for her.
so are the fires withstanding in LA, changing and in the whole industry changing for that matter as well. Have any projects, anything coming up other than the ranch? You were working on some stuff beforehand.
I
As
was. I'm
well.
no longer working on some stuff, but I'm also working on
Okay.
a bunch of other stuff. So like, I don't know particularly exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
But there was at one point I was going to do a car show,
Yep.
and that looked pretty good for a while, and it
Yeah.
looks like that may have gone away, but in its place will be at least two other car shows that I will be hosting, with different people.
Okay.
But I'm happy to come back when those things
Okay.
are a little more real.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, there are definitely things coming up. I'm working on all sorts of stuff behind the scenes. It's kind of overwhelming.
Plus the ranch, which is, for many people
Yeah.
would be a full-time,
Well,
my entire world kind of a project as well. So,
I totally agree with you, and obviously you're right there. Unfortunately, I mean, so the point of the road trip was not the point, but like one of the biggest catalysts for me was to get my mind right so that I could attack this ranch thing, solid when I got back.
yep.
And then I was gone longer than I thought I'd be, and then there's the holidays, and then there's a month of fires. So like I have really been in a bit of a holding pattern with the ranch. The whole team has.
Mm-hmm.
So it, I've been doing all of this other stuff in the meantime because that's what you have to do. I'm not going to twiddle my thumbs.
Yeah, of course.
But I haven't actually been doing as much rant stuff because we haven't been able to get up there, and all the behind the scenes is difficult.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see if in any way the well-known California bureaucracy will be in any way lightened because of the fire situation where we somehow may benefit of that, which would be nice.
Oh, I sure hope so. Talking to some of my friends from your area, and hearing their opinions and hearing them sound off on things and whatnot. And some who have, been those people who have bought a place in Bel Air or bought a place in one of these spots, and they buy the place and they literally gut it and renovate, and that renovation takes 4 years because of red tape and things like that happen. And
yeah, I mean, they'd be lucky at 4 years. If
yeah,
you're talking to business, sometimes it's 10 to 20 years, which is like, that's why nobody does it.
yeah,
Hard.
yeah, exactly. And so now we're talking about epic rebuilding on a massive scale, for people, and one would hope that the wheels would be greased a little bit for that. And again, I just want to say, anybody who has lost, I mean, everybody's feeling it, of course, but anybody who has lost, just know that Western Canada, our hearts are going out to you. We're so, oh, it's such a devastating thing. I'm grateful that isn't a bigger loss of life, and I know that that's small condolences for people, many times, but and it
Now that
sounds
the
like,
dust settling, I think people are getting to that. Whatever happened, most of it's just stuff. Surprisingly, considering the amount of destruction and
hmm
devastation. I
hmm
don't mean to make light of it's any life lost is not okay, but it's kind of amazing that only X amount of lives were lost considering the catastrophic destruction.
Exactly. And I mean, like that night, and I know what it's like to be in a place where it's raining flaming ash. Literally, it feels like apocalyptic hell. It is described in many films, or books. That's what it feels like. And that night, you sent me a video. You had a video of I think you took it, of
Yeah,
the
I took it
fire
from
that
the pool
started.
deck.
Yeah.
That was the smallest fire that LA had,
Yeah.
but it started while I was out on the pool deck. I mean, I'm saying, oh, here's the smoke from that one. Here's the
Yeah.
smoke from that one. And then I look over and I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
And sure enough, and then, I went inside, checked the news. Sure enough, it's right there. So,
Um,
and then the truthfully, it got a lot worse than that. I mean, that was really not that bad. I think it was 2 nights later, maybe the original Palisades fire, the fire that started it all, the
yep.
fire that burned to the coast
Yep.
while all of Malibu mansions are gone.
hmm
That one burned all the way towards us till it was at the top of the hill.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's crazy. Um,
It's a lot of distance. It takes me
I,
a very long time to drive to the ocean in Malibu, yet the fire got here. I mean, it took it a couple days, but that's amazing. Awful and amazing.
yeah, the geography. I'm getting to know the geography of LA, proper, a little bit better. But like, I'm sitting there talking to Hillary Rollins, who lives in Santa Monica,
Oh, she was
and
right there. Yeah.
okay, yeah. And at first, when
So
it
she's just
started,
southeast of the whole situation.
yes, and you're like, oh, Santa Monica, it couldn't possibly. People would think, oh, there's no way it's going to get that far down. Or, talking to Steve Weiner, who's like got a tie, an emotional tie to the Magic Castle, which is, a block up from Hollywood Boulevard.
And then one night there was a Hollywood fire that Magnus and I talked about because they had to
yeah,
pack the car. Yeah. So that's my point. Is the
yeah,
conditions were such that it didn't matter that the fires weren't near you. One could be near you in 5 minutes. Another
yes,
one, it could have been
exactly.
caused from those other ones. There's a lot of rumors about arsonists.
Yep.
I mean, there's like all sorts of stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think once LA was on fire, there were a few people that were probably pretty happy to see it burn.
I hate hearing that sentence and knowing it's
I
true.
don't mean it for me. I just,
No,
eat the rich. I've read so many. It was gut wrenching watching some of the stuff on social media when we in this city were hurting, when people were making it about politics, but both sides. There's no judgment here.
Mm-hmm.
Making things about politics and
stop it.
And just
Stop it.
it felt a little it felt a little too soon. They say too soon. It was way too soon. Like it may be out of your news cycle, but it's a little too soon to theorize while shit's still burning down here. And new fires were starting every day. I went last Wednesday to Malibu with Phil. We went to pick up a name drop. I had to pick up Jerry Seinfeld's old 1982 Porsche 911 SC Targa because I'm storing it in our garage because the current owners lost their home. Mm-hmm. So that day we were driving there, and there's only one way in and out of Malibu. So 40 minutes to get there, but then it was another 40 minutes just to get down the one single road into Malibu. Mm-hmm. And while we were there, the wind started tearing through the canyon. It was the windows were open for a minute, and I said, "Holy shit, do you feel that?" And he felt it too. And sure enough, driving back that night, another huge fire started, and I actually was driving back, and I was like, "This looks like another fire." And I went to the news, and it was a huge freaking fire. Mm-hmm. So they kept coming up. It's not like it wasn't one thing; it was everywhere. Mm-hmm. Everything everywhere all at once. Anyway, whatever. I know you didn't call me to talk about fires. I'm sorry.
Well, it doesn't matter. We're gonna.
My dad was a firefighter, so all of these things are kind of sensitive to me. He taught me about fire safety at an extremely early age, and I'm like still very, very. I take it very seriously still to this day.
Yeah.
So to have stuff just so out of control, where even the firefighters would be like, "This is way beyond us." You could have every firefighter in the world here right now. There's nothing they could do.
No.
It was weird.
And
by the way, that was going on here. I mean, like the conditions were such that on the same pool deck I keep talking about on the third floor, the furniture was blowing around from the 100-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
Sofas that weigh a couple hundred pounds were going from one side to the other because it was like a tractor trailer truck just caught the wind and got moved. So like, I don't know.
You talk about
it's such a bummer that people, where was the water? Where were all these things? Yes, totally. You're right. You're right about all of it. But God was also throwing fire.
Yes.
For lack of a better, like this was bigger than us.
Yes. Yes. And not to make light of it or anything like that, but these little, anecdotes or things that come out of it. Have you heard of any, you talked about, Jerry's former Porsche that was saved. Any story? You're deep into the car community.
Mm-hmm. There are some awesome miracle stories.
There we go. And I was going to ask if there's any stories that are of note when I say that.
There are, but unfortunately, there's so few compared to the losses.
What are some of the losses that we hear? Like rare cars. I mean, you've got rare cars all around you in your circle that you've seen, you've photographed. They've been up to GVBC. You've been on
some of them are gone
and stuff. And any
some of my some favorite cars are gone.
Okay, what are some note ones that we could say rest in peace to these cars here?
I don't know who's been public about their situations. Okay, I will say on the opposite side of that, for the ones that were saved, I have a friend, Damon McCarthy, works for McCarthy Studios. Paul McCarthy Studios, his father. Paul McCarthy is a very famous political artist. They have massive studios downtown that were fine. However, Paul McCarthy, the father, who's the artist, Damon McCarthy, my friend, who's the son, his sister, and someone else all lost their houses because they're all in the same area of Altadena. They all lost their houses. Their first studio, which is now Damon's full-time studio, that's a mile and a half down the street and in town. That's gone.
Oh.
And the house, literally, I mean, like all of their, you've seen the results. It's not like, oh, we had a fire at the house. Things are gone. It's just, there's nothing there anymore.
Cratered.
But on the same piece of property, his garage with all of his collector cars in it, still standing.
Man.
With no damage to the collector cars.
Yeah.
I mean, he's since moved them all out of that area. They're in a safe place, but they survived the fire. Why? And why did the house burn down on the same piece of property? No idea.
Yeah, that's something that when we had our big one in 03, that was a piece of education that we as a populace gained. The indiscriminate nature, the randomness of it. Gone, standing, gone.
It's tornado rules.
Yeah, there you. Oh, that's a good way of putting it. Yep.
Well, just because that's what it looks like. Why is this side of the street gone and this side of the street has the flowers are still blooming? Like, what the fuck is that all about? Excuse my language.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that, and I think people are trying to reconcile. And then some people it's the opposite. They lost their garage, but it's a miracle that most of their home is still there.
Right.
I know a couple of those. I know a lot of famous people. My ex-fiance lost her house in the Palisades, previous to Nicole, and I know
would hope it
so
wouldn't
many
be
famous people. Yeah, that would be tough. It's atrocious. It's a lot. It's the type of thing you can't zoom in and think about. It's too big. It's like, how big's the universe? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Unmanageable.
Yeah. Now to keep it on
I'm
cars.
blathering. I am fucking blathering today.
Sorry,
it's been a crazy week.
I'm grateful to blather with you, my friend. Crazy week. Yesterday, you alluded to it earlier. I want to ask you about it. That's one of the reasons why I thought if you had a slot today, we could talk about it. You went to Jay Leno's garage. And not your first time there, but your most recent time there. And again, hey, I'm grateful from an auto standpoint that place didn't go up. Can you imagine if that place went up, and the history of I think he's a caretaker in many ways of some pretty precious things to a lot of people.
In addition to being right there at Burbank Airport and being protected by Homeland Security, I think he also owns more than one fire truck. So I think Jay is going to be okay. I think the garage will be all right. I'd like to know if anyone else talks about Jay Leno as much on the Letterman podcast, because I'm not. I mean, I don't mean to be the guy who still knows Jay Leno on the Letterman podcast world.
Like Gabe's coming back on, and every time Gabe comes on, we touch on it. Or there's because there's.
I'm so conflicted. I'm so conflicted about it because I grew up such a lifelong Letterman.
Yes.
Like you remember that Howard Stern was on one time, and he what's I'm on your team, and you don't even care, and there was that whole thing. I kind of probably my whole childhood, I read the books and I was there for all of this stuff, and I probably, just became such a Dave guy that I'm still conflicted to have a personal relationship with Jay Leno. And the only reason I do is because my wife did before me, but then he was so nice to me that it's sort of like undeniable.
Yeah.
And I've watched him be so nice to other people in the car community. And I don't just mean the kind of nice that Letterman would talk about, the like, make sure you're photographed when you're changing somebody's tire kind of nice. I mean, like secret nice stuff that I won't talk about here, stuff that he doesn't want you to know.
Yes.
Stuff that Dave would do, stuff that Johnny did. So like, I'm old enough to know that nothing's black and white. And I still think that Dave should have gotten the Tonight Show and not Jay Leno, but I'm also kind of very over it because aren't we all?
Yeah. And at the same time, glad that he didn't
Conan
get it
thing,
because
same thing.
Yeah. Same thing, same story. And at the same time, I mean, it's not the story without Leno. And
I'm a little more on Conan's side than Dave's. I feel like, again, back to Howard. Howard Woods was on Conan before that deal. He's like, you think that's going to happen in 5 years? You're crazy. That's never going to work out. And he was right. I'm more on that camp.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So is what it is. But he's such a damn nice guy, and he's never been anything nice but nice to me, and has been really more than nice to me. I mean, he came here and did our little show. And I don't know. I'm conflicted with my positive feelings about Jay Leno because he is such a good guy to me.
and an ear for you right as the time as Nicole passed. I mean, as
Mhm.
a pillar
Yeah,
of
he's one of the
support to
first
you.
people to text, and I didn't see it. I was on the mountain for
Mm-hmm.
Breakfast Club with her parents because it was the
Mm-hmm.
day after. And so there were like 20 different texts. And when I got down, I couldn't get to it. By the time I got home, there's no reception up there. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't see these things until we got back down to the real world. And there were like 20. So I just kind of was hearting them. And as soon as I hearted his, literally I put the phone down and it rang because he called
Mm-hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm.
He was so upset. And it was the same thing yesterday. Same exact thing.
Yeah.
Oh, how you doing? But buddy, how are you doing?
Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. Like that was one of my questions. Because at the end of the day,
You look
however, you're
great.
still on people who aren't over it, whatever. You don't want one of them gone. You still want
No,
there to be them
that would
both
kind of
here
ruin it.
and both doing. Yes, thank you. So you
Somehow I
hear,
think we
oh
all
God,
still
are
want
you
to see them
okay?
together. I still
Yes.
somehow I really
Me
believe
too.
that despite the whatever animosity may have once been there, we all still agree that they were the best together.
Yes.
And I think we'd like to see that again. So,
There are
by
a
the way,
few
here's
people
an
who will hear
invitation.
that.
Come on,
Yes.
both of you.
Oh, there we go. Hey,
Safe
yeah,
space.
absolutely. Safe space. There are a few people who listen to this show religiously, whether they want to or not. They still do it.
You
Who will, in
tied him down,
caps,
captive
be
audience.
screaming, "It will not happen!" Screaming that. Oh no, no,
Oh
I'm with
yeah,
you.
I mean,
I
I
would
think
love to
they're
see it
right.
happen. I
But
agree, but
here's the thing: as much as I think they're, I don't know who you're talking about specifically, but as much as
there's a few of them.
a naysayer about seeing Jay and Dave together
Mhm.
again, I think there's a lot of truth to that. But then I just go to the Super Bowl commercial and I'm like, sorry, man, there's already a precedent.
Yep.
There's already a precedent, and I don't know what it's like from Dave's side, but I
Mhm.
do consider Dave a pretty enlightened individual, especially at this age, and I don't think he's above it. I don't think he thinks he's above it. I think if it was right,
Mhm.
he would consider it.
Mhm.
What do I know? I am nobody. You can't take any of this to the bank.
I
But
don't
my
think he's a
intuition is
person that
usually
would
pretty
wish.
good, and
Yeah.
I think my buddy Jay Leno, hilarious, so not true, but I think Jay Leno would do it. So,
Yeah. Oh,
um,
well, I think that goes without saying. I think that goes, which
but it
jumped
would
at the
all have to be
chance.
very, very right. I mean, it
Yeah.
is weird to speculate it now out of nowhere, but if it were thought about and actually processed, I bet it could be put together. I bet it could be put together.
A few weeks
And
ago.
let
Yeah.
me tell you something.
Yes,
I
sir.
don't think there would be a higher ratings get in the world today, in the world of entertainment.
I think it would have been a lot higher 5 years ago, but I still think that there's a lot of people who would be very, very interested in it.
I agree, and I don't. I feel like, I mean, you're right. I mean, so what do you think nowadays? They'd rather see Chris Rock and Will Smith make up. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
Is it
I
too
think it's
old of a feud? I think there's enough of us around, and they're both still alive, and they're both still working. It's not like
yes,
Johnny where he disappeared.
that's right. I'm very grateful that both of those guys, took the wisdom of seeing what happened with Johnny and saying, okay, we're going to go a different direction. I'm grateful that both have done that. A few weeks ago,
I think
we had,
you could call it wisdom. I think it's different personalities. I
yeah,
mean, Jay is a worker. Jay is a blue collar fucking literal
that's
and
true.
figurative
Yeah.
worker. And I think Dave is surrounded by good people and Dave's creative. And I feel like yeah, Dave was never gonna go away. Somehow I wasn't afraid of Dave going away. Maybe I'm
I
delusional about
was.
that, but I didn't think he would.
Al Franken, a few weeks beforehand, went on the show and said, "Hey, Dave, he wanted to say some things before Dave went off and became an eccentric recluse," and that was the
Because
joke that
that
he
was the
made.
Johnny way, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and I guess you know what? Maybe you're right. You know what? But maybe that's the obvious choice.
yeah,
Everyone would have assumed that of David Letterman, and
yeah,
that's to do the thing that you expect is not David Letterman.
yeah. That's a great
He's an
point.
absurdist.
Yes. A little note about the Super Bowl commercial. A few weeks ago, we had a former page on, who's a stand-up now, and he's just a great
Booking
guy named
pages now. Nice.
named Eric Schmidt, and he was a page at the time of
Eric
the Super
Schmidt.
Bowl commercial. Yeah, he's a stand-up now as well, and he's a great guy, just a great guy. But at the time of the Super Bowl
I feel like I know
commercial,
that person.
you might, yeah, you've got a lot of people in the comedy world, not just the cars world, so you
Is
might.
Don Giller here tonight? Is he with us or no?
He's not.
Okay,
No.
so what was the Super Bowl commercial? 2009 from my recollection? Or maybe
It
eight?
was
No,
20.
nine. It would have been January.
I think it was 2010 because it was.
2010.
I think he had the Tonight Show back already when he
Jay
did
did?
it. Yeah,
Oh, that would make sense.
yeah. I feel like it was 2010.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. um, and he was a page at the time, and you know the whole thing about the lore about this security, how secret you know this event was. Nobody knew about it, and it was the most amazing. You know, they brought in Leno with a mask and or a beard, some things like that. Oprah, same thing. Nobody saw it. Nobody saw it. He was telling a story about how the pages went to the Page Bar, which wasn't the same bar that everybody else went to. It wasn't, you know, McGee's because they wanted the cheaper beers because the pages weren't paid anything, and so the pages go to the Page Bar.
Sullivan's, right? It was Sullivan's at the time.
Barcelona, I think, is the bar
Oh,
he said
okay.
it was called. Um, and two of the pages walked in. They said, "Huh, weirdest thing. We just saw Jay Leno go." So everyone, you know, the commercial happens and Barack Obama, you know, watching it in the White House is like, "Hey, find out what happened there." Like, you know, everyone, it's like the surprise of the century. And no, pages were actually like, "Yeah, I'm sure Jay Leno just came into the Ed Sullivan Theater as we were leaving." I just thought that was I thought that was funny. The pages many times have the best stories. Um,
Ah,
but at the same time, I do want to ask how
well,
Jay
you're
is.
right
Like,
about that. The pages are, I mean, that's why I have my stories. I wasn't a page, but I was nobody.
mhm.
And pages are kind of no offense to any pages, but like in the grand scheme of what the show's doing, the pages come and go. So they're just bodies doing a job.
Yep.
And with that, you become a literal fly on the wall. I
Hmm.
mean, in most cases, pages are literally standing against the wall, and they're just if they're smart, if they're there for the right reasons, they're taking it all in. So
Yep.
that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Um, I just found that very, very charming because I mean, you know, the security was so tight on that, and it was a secret that was kept extremely well, and yet still, the people who were those, you know, professionally invisible flies on the wall, you know, it wasn't unnoticed by everybody. But how is I do want to get to how is Jay? Like, how did he seem? Is he physically okay, or is
Hmm.
he?
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
He's doing great. I mean, he's we've talked about some other stuff that isn't so great, but he's doing great.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our thoughts are with him on that stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean,
I
he
assume
was
you two
very
could
concerned
connect a
with
little bit.
Nicole. Obviously, he was very, very concerned with Nicole. He was shooting an episode of his television show, Jay Leno's Garage. So we did not get uh, a ton of time,
Yeah.
but it was neat to. It's one thing that Jay Leno knows you, but I still feel like absolutely nobody because in my mind, I'm still absolutely nobody. I'm the
Yep.
fly on the wall that you can't even see me. I'm just another guy in a late show jacket. Don't even pay any attention. Um, it's very weird that you go over there and he's got what a dozen or 20 employees at his huge museum, and then the show has another 10 or a dozen uh crew people, production people,
Hmm.
and up to the gate and my name gets the gate open like my legit
Mm.
me they
Hmm.
didn't know who my friend was driving, like, oh, Jay Ron, oh, okay. Open the gate. They're like, does he know you're coming? I said, no, he's just been saying to stop by and whatever. He said, oh, because we're shooting the show, it's not really a great time. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And it feels like, oh, we're being set up to, like, this is not, you're not, you probably only get 5 minutes. Not only were we there for hours, but everybody knew who I was. They all wanted to talk about Newcombs and good vibes. And
Mm.
it was so bizarre that they have any idea who I am. It blows my fucking mind. It really does. It's a very, very strange world. I really thought all of this was because they all knew Nicole. I really in my heart believed it. I was like, she's gone now. What do I do? And it's so bizarre to even conceive that, like, I'll be okay at the end. I still
Mm.
don't feel okay,
No, of
So
course.
um
But this helps a little bit.
well, it's a weird a little bit because you can write a different future than you thought you could a
Yes.
minute ago, because, like, oh, well,
Yes.
you're not where you thought you were, or whatever your perception, you've been in a bubble for so long, whatever.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm talking in rhymes tonight. Are you understanding what I'm saying? It's been a
Yeah.
long couple weeks and I'm all caffeinated and stuff.
Yeah,
So
but
am I all right?
I've been reading Dr. Seuss to my granddaughter all the time, so I understand. It's fine. It's all good. I understand it
So I
perfectly.
am speaking in riddles. Great.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. Uh, can you talk about the car that was featured on the show? Can you talk about what they featured at that night or that recording? Some of the things you
Another
saw?
coincidence. Somebody I knew.
Oh,
Hilarious. I walked in and I was like, Randy? It was Randy Carlson, Bug and Box from well, Bug and Box is his handle on Instagram, but he
yep,
hosted a show on whatever it was called back then, Velocity or Discovery Motors or whatever
yep,
the Discovery TV channel is,
yep.
called Carcheology, where he would kind of go find barn finds and stuff. He's been on our show a couple times.
Hmm.
Fantastic guy, but they're bringing us into where they were shooting whatever, and I was like, Randy, he had a big hug and everything. It was just, it's exactly what I'm talking about. It was so bizarre. I used
Yep.
to look in the window in this world and be like, ah, oh, wouldn't that be neat if I could be inside or whatever.
Yep.
And now I can. I don't know. It's very strange. I'm still getting used to the new normal.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Nothing is what I
grateful.
thought it was.
Did you see a lot of Tonight Show stuff
Yeah.
that was
Well,
there? What
so
was?
it's overwhelming to be at Jay Leno's garage. If you're a car fan, it's overwhelming because there's way too much to look at. There's so
Yep.
many layers. It's been
Yep.
there for so long. He's been collecting for so long. It's ever growing. Um, so it can be too much to process, to take in,
Hmm.
sensory overload.
Hmm.
So I noticed some old Tonight Show, me and sets and production
I do.
design and
That's
art
what I'm asking.
direction and
Yep.
Kathleen Anchors from the Letterman days. So I noticed one thing, and then that led. I go, well, if there's one thing, and then it just sent me on a goose chase of looking at all these old signage that I recognize. I know where they all were on all the different iterations from different sets.
Hmm.
Keep in mind, I was a hardcore Dave fan, but I watched it all. I know
Yep.
you know this about me, but
Of
your
course.
audience probably doesn't. I watched every talk show imaginable, and this was the '90s when CNBC was the talk show network and all of that. There were
Hmm.
probably 50 or 60 talk shows on every goddamn day.
Yep.
Everybody who used to have a sitcom had a daytime talk show, from Theo, from frickin' the Huxtables
Yep.
to and Tempest had her own show. Speaking of which, the other girl from the Huxtables,
Yep.
but Ricky Lake and Richard Bay if you were on the East Coast, and so like I watched Leno not for the content, but
No.
just to see what they were doing,
Yep.
and not irregularly, but like just check-ins,
Well, plus you worked
check-in.
for Conan, and Leno was the lead in, and I mean, you get
Yeah,
it's in the
meant
same
nothing to
world.
me. I told you that. I love to say I worked at Conan because people love Conan so much now. But the truth is, at the time, we all thought it wasn't going to work. It was the
Yes.
first year.
Yeah.
So it's a different memory than like people who worked on the TBS Conan, where he
Yes.
he came back swinging after losing the Tonight Show and whatever.
Yeah.
Or somebody who had made late night a success after 10 years or whatever. I mean, he
Hmm.
really made it a powerhouse show.
Hmm.
I feel like when Andy left, he found his own voice and turned it into something. And
Hmm.
but I wasn't there for any of that. I didn't see
Right.
any of that. I watched it on
Right.
television like everybody else. But the part I was actually part of was rough, and it
Yeah.
wasn't Dave, and that's all anybody compared it to.
Yep.
Same space, same kind of show, not Dave.
Yep. Yep.
Crazy. I know I told you this, but I think people don't really realize because it always gets written up that they were on like 3-month renewals or whatever.
Yep.
I shit
3 week
you not,
renewals.
we
Yeah.
were on 1 week renewals.
Yeah. Yep.
We were on week to week. And as NBC crew, because technically I like to say I worked on Conan because when I was a kid, I didn't really know the difference because I was working on the Conan O'Brien late night show.
Hmm.
But I really worked for NBC, both as an intern and then as a production assistant and audio assistant, whatever else I did. It was all really for NBC where they would place you on wherever. It just so happened that like, oh, I was placed on Conan
Hmm.
or whatever show it happened to be.
Hmm.
And we all, I was there with the old timers that were there when Dave was there.
Yes. The old union
And
guys who were behind the camera
yeah,
and
yeah. And
the stage hands. Yep.
yes. And in this case, the audio guys specifically, I was really, really tight with. And, um, you know, they were just waiting. It was a waiting game.
Um,
He wasn't going to succeed. The show wasn't good. This was what was going on within the building.
mhm.
Poor Conan. I give him so much credit to this day for overcoming all of that. Despite what
Absolutely.
happened with the Tonight Show and everything else, I give him so much credit for overcoming all of that.
For anybody who wants to go further down the rabbit hole, a few weeks ago we had a guy by the name of Andrew Buss on, who was the author of the oral history of Conan starting late night that appeared in Vanity Fair last year,
Huh.
and he went through all this and he talked to all of the principals involved, and basically the story ended very close to the night that Dave came on as a
Yeah.
guest, and
Yep.
Andrew talked to all of these people now who reminisced about that first year and exactly the time you're talking about and when the turning point happened. And to me, it's as fascinating lore as Dave not getting the Tonight Show. To me, all of it is connected, and it's every bit as fascinating on all measures. Especially Dave coming on that one moment. We talked a lot about that one moment. Dave reminisced about it. Conan reminisced about it, and when he compared the oral histories together, they lined up perfectly. That
Wow.
famous joke where Dave said, how did you get this show? And
How
Conan,
did you get this show?
yeah, and he did the perfect, I would say, even almost Letterman-esque like quip, but
What was his
completely his
response? I
own.
can't remember.
He, there was a talk show, have your own talk
A
show, host
write-in
your own talk shows
contest.
contest. I came in fourth, which was the line that he responded back to, and I mean that was it. And he genuinely made Dave laugh with "I came in fourth,"
I
and
came in fourth is that's a good
oh,
joke. Yeah, that is a good joke. I just
uh,
watched the Shandling documentary again the other day where they go through all that as well with the Dana Carvey and everybody
yep,
who was going to get late night after Dave announced his move to CBS.
yep,
And it was neat to go back there again and remember those times because, my whole life in that world
yep,
started right after.
yep.
Um, yeah, it's neat. I would love to go back. I didn't do it on this trip. Anytime I was in the city, it was to go to the hospital, to see some friends who were recuperating. But I think next time I would like to try to make a point to get up into NBC again and see what's going on.
Oh
See
yeah,
it all again. I see what the Kelly Clarkson studio looks like now. See what Fallon's like across the hall now. They
yep,
have changed everything over
yep.
there. I mean, when I was there, it was a painted, tidied up version of what Dave left. NBC was. The
Mm-hmm.
hallways were. It was all the same. Wires hanging out of the ceiling, things half painted.
Yep.
Um, very very rough. A working space, and now, good lord, whenever I see a clip of it on either Jimmy's social media or whatever, anytime I see that sixth floor hallway, I can't believe how sparkly clean it is. There's no equipment anywhere anymore. It's like
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Dave's comment on exactly what you're talking about, because recently he was there for whatever reason it was. I forget what he was
Why?
referring to. He
What
was
was he
referring to
there
this.
for?
He might have been there when the night Paul was performing or whatever. He was there, and Jimmy
Oh,
talked.
for Darlene Love on the Tonight Show, maybe.
That might have been that. It might have been before that. It might be a year ago
Oh,
or whatever,
okay.
year and a half ago. But he said Dave was like, we had none of this. He goes, I love your linoleum. I love your, he just coveted that. He said, we didn't have any of this stuff, and yeah, it's a very different animal now. But like certain things remain. Like there's at least two. I think it might only be two folks who work for the current incarnation of late night that were at the original incarnation of late night, and
Who? Who's still there?
Wally Ferriston is
He
one.
wasn't there at late night.
Oh yeah, we've had him on the show. He talked about all the times that he was cue card guy at late night. There were many
Oh,
times that
on
he.
late night, but not from day one like a Barbara Gaines.
No. I'm sorry, but
Oh,
worked
I'm
for the
sorry. Okay, I
original
understand.
incarnation of the franchise and are now
Gotcha.
working for the current incarnation.
Totally gotcha. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
and Jay
understand.
Johnson's the other one who was Walter
Oh,
Kim's
yeah, that's a
partner.
good one.
Yeah, so
Not
he's
throughout though. These aren't. Well, Wally stayed at NBC the whole time,
Wally
but Jay
stayed.
went to.
No, Jay
Yeah,
obviously went over with Dave and then came back once Late Show finished its run. But the pickle's still there. The pickle, the giant pickle, has made its way. It started in the one of the original writers' rooms, and it's still in the offices of Late Night. So there are little echoes, teeny tiny echoes, but it's a completely. This is something I wanted to talk about, and it's a good segue. It's like you've done this before. The medium that we have is
can I ask you a
changing.
question before you get there?
Yeah,
What do you know where are the offices for late night now? Do you know
I
what
don't
floor
know
they're
that.
on
I
or
don't
where
know
they
what
are? Because
floor they're on.
I'd be curious that because the offices you can't really change too much. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
think
oh,
it's on
it's
a
an
separate
office building.
floor, than the
But I'm
studio.
curious
Yeah,
who's in. Right, of course.
yeah.
I'm curious who is in Dave's old offices
Oh,
because
that's a
even
good.
Conan
Yeah.
wasn't when they moved when I was on the show.
Hmm.
Conan was in the old offices, but then
Hmm.
they moved shortly thereafter. NBC did something; they were redoing stuff, and they moved him to another place, and so then they weren't in the same offices anymore.
It's a great question, and we can find that answer out for sure. I can. I
Doesn't
can. I
matter. I was
can.
just
No.
curious
Yeah.
because
No.
those
I don't.
two
I don't know
corner
it off.
offices, the one looking south,
Yeah.
was on the 14th floor, on overlooking Sixth Avenue, was Dave's office across from
Yep.
Meg Parson, and then the other corner was They said it was Paul Schaefer's, but I think it was actually Morty's office, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, interesting.
I think Paul Schaefer's office was over there, but I'm pretty sure it was Morty's office.
It was Dave's. If you might know the answer to this, I don't know, but I think it was. Was it Dave's where they had to replace the window with lucite, with the bulletproof lucite because of the that was
Yeah,
Dave's actual office, right?
yeah, and that was still there when I was there too, because I went up to go look at
Oh, that's
it.
fantastic. See, this is where
Yeah.
you and I bond because
But that was in the 90s.
that's
I would imagine whenever they redid that office, the thing that I just talked about, when they
yeah.
moved Conan's people, that I would imagine they probably changed it then.
Okay. And what
But
we're
but
talking
that
about
was
here is
definitely Conan's first office up there.
oh,
And
that's very
the
cool.
assistant's office was Lori Diamond's old office and whatever.
Yeah.
At first.
Okay. Yeah, I love that symmetry.
So
And,
that's kind of why I was asking about that.
yeah.
That's literally why I asked the question.
Oh, that's fantastic. But to go into, everything is new, everything is, we've watched this medium that we care about so much has fragmented, has changed the entire, everything is changing, television is changing, but then some things, that were old become new again. I believe that giant, beautiful television that you have in the living room, that's a Samsung TV, is it not?
No, it's not. I wish it was
Oh,
for
it's
the
not.
Letterman channel. Yeah,
I
no,
was
I
gonna
wish.
ask. I was gonna ask because
No, it's
now,
none of our. I don't have own a Samsung TV, and we already have all newish TVs, so it's like
yeah.
I can't go buy one just because.
Oh, for some reason I had in my head that it was a Samsung. Yeah, I was gonna
No, I
ask you about
wish.
that. It's so funny that these fast channels now exist,
I wish
and it
there were an
goes.
app for the Samsung TV that you could download, because there's an app for every other freaking thing that I don't want.
Yeah,
And then here's one thing I actually would use and do want, and I can't do it.
same thing. When I found out about it, I reached out to them and I railed at the fact. Okay, now I have to buy an effing Samsung TV. I said
Right.
because
And their answer is, yeah,
yeah,
that's what we
well,
want you to do. That's why we
uh,
paid all the money for these Letterman clips.
isn't it funny though that you and I growing up, especially you and I growing up in our time, like I remember the time where it was a challenge for me to watch Late Night with David Letterman simply because of my age, and then the invention of the VCR and me being able to learn how to use the time recorder of the VCR, so I would at least be able to get to watch Late Night. But back then, you can't predict anything. You don't know who's going to be on. Commercials, you're watching commercials. Now we've got a fast channel where you don't know who's going to be on.
I
You
didn't
can't
have any.
record it.
You looped me into your experience there, and that was none of that was my experience. Just FYI.
You watched all of Late Night with David Letterman real time every single night?
Correct. That's why I was a bad student. It was much more
Oh,
important to me.
right. But
I was going and doing a show. I couldn't watch it the next day. I needed that information tonight so I could go the next day to go do my show at the high school.
okay. Okay, I see.
You know
So
what I mean?
at
Like,
that
to me,
age, yeah.
I couldn't. Yes, we had VCRs, and I probably recorded it anyway, but I always stayed up and watched it.
Yeah. I thought we had talked about that before. But my point is, you and I remember when the VCR became a part of our lives. Otherwise, it was just appointment television. You saw what you saw, you remembered what you remembered, and that was kind of it. That's kind of what the
Yeah, I'm
fast
old. I
channel
got
is
gray in my
now.
beard.
Yeah, yeah, me too. But the fast channel now, same thing. You don't record anything. You don't know really what's going to be coming on. There are commercials there that you can't fast forward. You watch it, and it's funny
Okay.
how the old has become new again, and is using sort of a similar medium to what we saw back in the day. And I
Hmm.
just think that that's fascinating. That's what um, Letterman's one of Letterman's current incarnations is something very similar to back in the day. Obviously curated and changed a little bit, but it's fascinating to me the rise of these digital channels that exist. That is kind of a throwback to old TV.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have access to the Letterman one, but I do have Apple TV. So you got Tubi and
Mhm.
Hoobi or whatever, any of those. And so there's like a Johnny Carson channel on Antenna TV. And,
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. I'm not as delighted to watch it the way I used to with commercials and everything else as you are. But I mean, that's how the world works, right? Everything's a pendulum. And,
yeah.
this is also the only business I've ever known. I don't exist in the real world. I don't understand it. That's why I'm so fascinated about what's going on, nowadays
Hmm.
with me and my life. I still can't believe it's happening because I was always the kid peering in or alone in my room.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see once I someday own a Samsung TV.
Yeah, me too. And I can't wait for that. It's comfort food. I mean, you want to have something on in the background while you're
So you haven't even seen it yet? You don't
a
have one
little.
either?
I've seen a little bit. I don't have a Samsung TV, but I have friends who do. So I have seen. I've seen it. I know how the format works. I
So is
understand it.
that what you're so that's more you're nostalgic about the hey, I'm gonna come over to your house and watch it because it's on your you have HBO and I don't, so I'm gonna go like that makes sense to me. I
I
understand
literally
that.
did that with a friend. You just nailed it. I totally did that with a
So
friend. So
that's the nostalgia you're cashing in on, not the fact that we're watching it on television with commercials. Okay, I get you. I
well,
definitely get you.
yeah, and I
It's
mean, you can't
bringing you
predict.
back in a lot of ways.
Totally. I mean, back then you couldn't predict, like, there's so much that's predictable now in the experience of watching this medium, whatever, in whatever way you watch it. It's so predictable, including like fast forwarding commercials and things like that. Well, watching, this curated content, you don't know what's coming up next. The commercials are random. They kind of show up the way it does on YouTube and things like that. And it's just, to me, yeah, it is charming, and it does bring back some of that feeling of being a kid. It does do that, and as you know, I'm delighted by such things. So I enjoy that. One of the
They did it for
questions
you, Mike. Walter
absolutely.
told me, he said, we're doing this just for Mike Chisholm.
And Mike doesn't own a Samsung TV, but I will. I've been looking at them. We went to Costco the other day, and one of those OLEDs. I'm like, hey, Candy,
You
I
know,
feel like
you either need to buy a Samsung TV or change the name of your podcast. Get in or get out. Choose, pick a side. What are you doing? Have you talked to Barbara Gaines lately?
not about that. Not about that. Um, no, I haven't talked to Barbara lately. Um,
I think that you are a super fan of everything. And I feel like you could host a podcast that's the super fan. I think it should be the Mike Chisholm Super Fan Podcast. And then sometimes it's Letterman, sometimes it's sneakers, sometimes it's superheroes. I think, you've got a lot of interests and you
I
have
do.
a tremendous amount of enthusiasm wrapped around each one of those
Hmm.
interests. I mean, you could do an awful lot
I
with a
appreciate.
Mike's a fan of everything podcast in a good way. I mean that in a
Yeah,
good way. I wish I had your enthusiasm for life.
I
I
appreciate
mean
that.
that from my heart.
I know you do. I know. I appreciate that. Well, and now we've our dynamic has gone long enough to know that, like I remember you talking to Candy. It was either when we were on your show, or maybe it was before we record. It might actually have been recorded on our episode on Late Night Playset, where you kind of talked to Candy a little bit and said, okay, is he like this? All that, like, you picked her brain a little bit, and she's like, oh yeah, no, 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 this is him. Like, this is, and
You
it
have
has
to
been like,
acknowledge you're hard. I mean, you have to take some responsibility. You have to acknowledge you're hard to read sometimes, right? Or no?
I
You
don't
don't think so?
know. I have no idea if
No.
I'm hard to read or not. I'm just me, and I just try and throw it out there. I do know that, growing up, probably maybe one person out of 10 flat out is repelled by me because they think I'm fake, or because they don't like the enthusiasm. It's
Mhm.
just a
Rubs them
a,
the wrong way for
a,
whatever reason.
a repelling. Yeah, it's like magnets that don't connect, but they will never connect. They have to repel from each other. Probably 1 out of 10. There's probably 2 or 3 out of 10 that would look and go, is this guy for real? And they watch for a long time, and and
Check your
and to
metrics.
see, yeah, well, kind of to see that, yeah. And then
Yeah,
there's probably 5 out of 10 people that I've just
they like you right off
I
the
get
bat.
along with, because I'm a
Yeah,
relationship guy. I love to connect with people. I love to listen. I am fascinated by many things naturally. I've got a natural curiosity about this stuff. So
yeah.
yeah, and it's funny because I've noticed that in the Letterman world too. And I'm not going to say anything obviously specifically about anybody, but like every once in a while I'll run into somebody in the Letterman world who's like, but it's very few and far between. But even in the Letterman world, there's 1 out of 10 of those people, maybe, and maybe it's even less than that.
Who? What?
That have that same opinion of me. It's like, oh, it's the repelling.
Oh, I didn't know which one you were talking. Sorry, so many opinions. Uh, I mean, people are people. No two are alike. So,
Hmm.
um, it's whatever. I wouldn't worry about it too much. I just whatever we were talking about a minute ago seemed a little more poignant.
Yeah. Can I flip
I
to?
feel like I think we used to talk on the phone, and at some point I switched to I preferred to talk on the podcast because this is going back to what you were talking about with Candy, me talking to Candy on the show, saying, "Is he really like this?"
Hmm.
I think that I don't know how much you want to talk about this. Do
I
you
don't
want to
care.
talk about this?
Go
Really?
for it. Yeah.
I think, remember there was that, again, I don't listen to Howard Stern at all. And this is the third time I'm bringing up Howard Stern in this conversation. He was on Dave a long, long time ago.
Yep.
And somehow it came up at one point, about how they used to talk on the phone late at night and whatever. And then they'd stop doing that because Howard would then go talk about it on the air or whatever.
Yeah. He betrayed the trust. Yeah.
That's how Dave felt, or whatever. I think there was something like that with the nuts and bolts there.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you've ever betrayed my trust in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that's really in your. I mean, if you ever do, I don't think it'll be on purpose. That doesn't seem to be your. Yeah, that's not your. That's not who you are.
Yeah.
But there was like when we would talk on the phone. We started the dynamic of you didn't have a show when our friendship began.
I had the men's mental wellness podcast. I had HeCast, which
correct,
is where it started.
But not the Letterman podcast.
No.
No set, no screen use stuff, no microphone, none of that stuff.
Nope.
And so we would have conversations, and you were helping us with our show.
Yeah.
So we would have conversations that I thought were like writer's room type conversations where, okay, we're just spitballing, we're throwing things around, and we'll pick it up next time our next time we converse or whatever, and then either make a decision about that or whatever the heck. And it felt like we were not on the same page there. It felt like you would either spring into action because you're Mr. Action guy instead of like I'm Mr. Think About It guy. You know what I mean? Let's massage this for a little bit. And then it felt like we didn't always have the same takeaways from our conversations. And
I think that's
I would then get sometimes frustrated, not bad frustrated, but like confused frustrated. Like, what the fuck? And Nicole would too, because it was really more, I think she pointed it out to me about whatever. It was both of us. And none of this is bad, by the way. I mean, obviously we're here, right?
Yeah.
But as for why the transition happened to, let's have a record of all of our conversations so that at the very least, even if we leave with a different perspective, there is a video record where I can at least go back and look at to find out where we went wrong or where because a lot of times I'd be like, okay, cool. So we're on the same page. And we both would feel like we were, and then we weren't.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, how the hell did that happen? So that was the only reason. That's a very long explanation. I don't want you to think that like I don't like talking to you on the phone or anything.
Oh God, no.
I also at the same time was getting more and more busy, and Nicole was good. You know what I mean? Like life changes at the same time.
Well, and let's be like, every once in a while something big would come up with involving somebody or whatever, and we would compare notes about, holy, did you see that this was happening with the Letterman set or something like that, where we would connect about other things behind the scenes where we would never say it on camera as well. Like that would happen sometimes too.
There's weird things. Like I told you, I want to give you that microphone as long as you don't put it on your desk on the show. And since I gave it to you, it's only been on your desk on the show. You know what I mean? There's weird things like that.
I don't remember that.
I know. Which is why it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I wanted you to have it, but you having it there on your desk makes that one feel it's like it just, there was a whole thing. I thought I was adding it to the props in the back, but at the same time, once I thought about it, I thought, you gave the guy a gift, let him do whatever the hell he wants with it. And that's where I landed. I don't care what you do. I want Mike to be happy. But like there was all these little things that would like get frustrating in the moment. And then at the time I was dealing with Nicole and whatever, and just didn't have the time to know it's not personal. It was like we never had time to really just get it organized.
I hear you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I hear you too.
You can feel free to cut all this out.
No, I'm not cutting any of it out. The perspective I have, like, and for me, okay, to flip it, it's not just Jay that has the confusion on that. I do too, because in my mind, this show is named this show because of something you were very like, I think you should call it the Letterman podcast. I think you should. And your recollection of it is very different.
Well, I know my intentions. Well. I might have said the words you were saying, but you were talking about, this is where I'm living in a writer's room, and you're like, we're going to print. I'm like, we're nowhere near ready for print. We're just spitballing.
Yes.
And
that is a perfect example of what your previous
for me, you were describing what your show was going to be. You asked me to be part of it. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Tell me what it looks like.
Yeah.
And then you described it.
Yep.
And I said, oh, okay. So like Mark Malkoff does the Carson podcast, you're going to do the Letterman podcast. I'm talking about from a descriptive standpoint.
Yeah.
There is no way in a million years I would ever tell you to name your show the Letterman podcast.
Yeah, and that is not the takeaway that I had. Like literally, I thought you said Mark Malkoff's ending the Carson podcast. You should
Well, I
start the
thought the
Letterman
timing was
podcast. Like
right.
that's what I heard.
Yes.
So I immediately go to Shecky, and I'm like, "Hey, what do you think about doing it this way? What's the worst that can happen?" That's what he said.
Nothing.
And I was like,
Nothing.
"Okay."
No, nothing.
And so it
There's
wasn't.
no,
I
I just
after
didn't want the
heard you
credit
say
because
that. Yeah.
I'm so careful to not use Letterman anything in any of our stuff because
Right.
I'm just I feel like I've my whole life, whether I had to sneak my way in or not, I've always felt like an honorary pantser. I wanted it that bad that I went and did the
Yep.
goddamn job for free for a
Yep.
while. Okay.
Yep.
So when they wouldn't take me, so I just started showing up.
Yep.
So like I just have always sort of operated under like, well, my modus operandi is sort of like shy of sneaking in and stealing David Letterman's microphone as a kid. Shy of that, has always been like, all right, I need to do things at the level of Pants, especially because I always thought one day I would get the attention of Pants and they would
Yep.
want to do something with me, whatever. That was like my
Yep.
little child heyday. It's like everything. I like one day I'll get on the Tonight Show and Johnny will like me, and then
Yep.
I'll have a career. And
Yep.
it was probably some version of that.
Yeah.
So I'm really careful, and I also like when Barbara Gaines said, "I'll do your show if you change the name," I would have said, "Okay." Like you'll never have to bring it up again. It's already done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's me.
Mm-hmm.
I was still, you know what I mean? I don't know what I would do now, but I still feel like if you, well, it doesn't matter. It sounds like I'm trying to tell you what I think you did was wrong, which is not true. It's none of my business what
It's
you
not
do.
what you would have done, though. No, and I
Oh,
understand
no,
it's not what you
in a
would have
million
done.
years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's good. I mean, why would I don't want to be the same as you and you the same as me.
Yeah.
But I don't want credit for it either because I never would have told you to do that because if we had the conversation, I thought we'd have a conversation further. It was like you had a fucking a theme song and a jingle and everything the next week and a logo. Like you did it so quick, you moved so fast that it was like you couldn't back up the bus.
Yeah. And
You know what I mean? Like you had a
yeah.
website and everything immediately.
Well, and that wasn't anything, again, nothing to do with you on that. Part of that was when Rick and I would talk about the other catalyst, and I've mentioned this on the show.
I forget about the Shecky connection. Yeah, I always forget about that too.
Well, he was the one where that's like, again, I read the email the other day, and I mean, because I miss him every day. I don't know how
Oh,
many
I'm
humans. I was
sorry.
just talking to Steve Weiner about it. I went and saw Steve Weiner in Seattle. Actually, I want to tell you about what I just went and saw Monday night in Seattle. But so Steve Weiner was flown from New York to Seattle to be part of something.
You were in the States? You were in the States and you
for
didn't
one
call,
day
you didn't
for
say hello.
I was there for one day. And I'll talk about it in a second, but I was talking to Steve about it, and I mean, I don't know how many humans think about Rick Sheckman every single day. I know I'm one of them.
That's awesome.
I
bet there are probably more.
Well, Alex Bennett, but Checky was such a. Yes, I know that there probably are more, but I think about him every single day anyway because this show does not exist without Rick, and I said to Rick, and this is after our conversation, after like it was probably actually part of that because I felt such a push, and I said to him because Rick was a cinephile, and I said to him, I said, look, I said, if I'm gonna do, what should I do this, or
Right.
could I do this? And he goes, what's the worst that could happen? Who cares? Give it a shot. That's what he said, and I said, okay, but if I am gonna do this, I said, I need a Tom Hagen, like I need a consigliere. That's what I
Mm.
need. Like, and he instantly said, I will be that for you. And
Oh,
he's the one that set me up with some of these people from the beginning and
yeah.
the credibility. Like, I wouldn't have done it without him. Like, and I mean, I
That's
appreciate the fact
awesome.
that
I
you
love
did
hearing that.
encourage me, and you did encourage me in a big way, and fuel the enthusiasm. And I love that. But it was ultimately like, again, when you threw that, what I considered to be an idea out there, and I went to Rick with it, that was the conversation. And I was saying to Steve the other day, I just reread that email again with Rick, and I miss him every single day. Um,
Yeah. I'm
but
sorry, buddy. I
he
know that's
was,
still a loss for you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I
no,
forgot.
no, it's okay. But at the end of the day, that it went through different, I felt his permission was permission that I felt was enough. And
Mhm.
and he would tell me about, like, because I want to be very careful how I say this. I don't want to. it's a little bit like levels of high school. And I don't even want to say the popular kids versus the not popular kids. It's like the kids who are in grade 12 versus the kids who are in grade 9, maybe. And
Okay.
Rick was
A
one of the
hierarchy?
kids.
You mean a hierarchy?
Yes, but I don't want. I just want to be very careful not to say that it was jocks versus preps. I don't want to make it like that. But
Okay.
Rick was in that higher level. He was in the level that would hang out with Barbara or Jerry or these people, and Rick would go out for lunch. This is like when the podcast was maybe 6 or 7 episodes long. They would go out for lunch together, and Rick would send me pictures of them. And even one lunch, they even brought a cardboard cutout of Dave for that at the lunch, and he would talk to that whole group about Mike Chisholm doing the Letterman podcast.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel that same dis-ease that you're feeling about the Letterman podcast that you do because of that. Like
I
I
don't
hear
feel
you.
I only feel that way about any affiliation that I have with naming it when I know
Yes.
it's an issue because
Yes.
that was not my intention. I understand you
Yeah.
took it that way. So that's the only point I was trying to make there.
And I get you.
My disease is because of my childhood, and you know what I mean? Like I didn't come into this thing clean because I had my own problems.
Yeah.
So like I'm aware that that's always behind me.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it ever would have come up again if she didn't, if you didn't ask Barbara to be on the show. You know what I mean? Like I never would have brought it up again if she didn't, if her response to you wasn't, well, it depends. Are you going to change the name of your show? What she had to go, she said, will you do my podcast?
Uh, yeah. I asked Barbara Gaines if she would come on the show, and she said, I think it was like not I tell you what, but it was that cadence for sure. I'll tell you
As if
what.
like, I'll give you a bargain.
Yeah, yeah,
Here's
yeah,
a
yeah,
deal.
yeah,
We'll make a deal.
yeah. If you change the name of the show, I'll come on. And she even gave a couple suggestions that I thought were no. But then I received a
Oh, you
suggestion.
didn't tell me that. She gave you alts,
She did.
dude.
Um,
Oh, and you didn't take one.
yeah,
Good
no,
for you. Good for you.
no, I didn't.
Oh my
But
God.
I'll tell you this:
I
I would
can't
have,
even imagine. That's
and
such an opportunity that I wish I had.
yeah, I would have entertained a phone call. I would have entertained a phone call to talk about it and to consider it. Um, and so my response was, I'm trying to figure out if you're serious or joking. I did one of those. Like I'm trying to figure out because I mean
Gauge the level of
she's got this
seriousness.
crazy, awesome, eccentric mind that I really do appreciate about her. Right? Like I do. Like when I met
Amen.
her on the street that day and we talked about it, and Rupert literally introduced me to her as, oh, this is Mike. He hosts the Letterman podcast, and oh. And she, I think her first question was, "Do you get paid for that?" I think that was her first question. That's when I met her. This is long before that conversation, the email conversation. But anyway, or do you make a living doing that? I think is what she said. Um, but anyway, then she said, she gave a couple suggestions or whatever. I would have bantered that around. Now, if she would have given me the same suggestion that somebody else gave me later on, um, I probably
Me?
would have
Are you
said
talking about
yes
me?
immediately. Like I
Because I
probably
thought
would have
about, I
said,
was,
I have never said that one out loud, and I would appreciate
do
if
you-
we don't, because I'm still in my
I won't
mind
say it. I won't say it here,
considering
but
it.
do you know where that came from? Do you know why I made that suggestion? Because this whole
Uh,
situation bothered me so much that I was losing sleep over it. And I had to come up with some sort of resolution in the world, whether it got taken or not,
yeah,
that would be good for everybody.
that would be the name, by the way.
You, Barbara, the pants people, like all of those things.
Mhm.
And literally, like other things have in my life, I got the vision of like, oh, here's how you change it so simply
Yeah,
without changing it, but you're changing it, et cetera, et cetera.
it's
So I
so
won't say
good.
it,
Yeah,
but uh, that one I would take credit for because I feel like it was solving a problem on multiple levels.
hopefully more to come on that. I love that. I love that you say that there, because I do think it's fantastic. And there's also another. Yeah, it's a
It
perfect
goes
name for
back
it.
to what I was saying about you as a person too, and who you are as a host. And then it to me as a packet. This is me in my producer hat now, not my host hat.
Yeah.
It feels like the whole package makes more sense
Um,
as a palatable, watchable. Like, oh,
yeah.
I understand this content.
And there's layers to it too. There's a couple other layers that are there as well that I love about it. Like I still think it's genius, and I'm still like, it's like a round that I know is in the chamber. In case there's one last
you don't
duck
want to
that
play it
comes
until
up,
it's the right time.
yeah, I'm gonna, when the duck comes up, I'll fire it immediately because I love it. Like I love it.
Wow.
And so, but I'm
I
just,
just always figured that was lip service and you were being nice in the moment and then never did it, so that it probably didn't like the idea. And then I never
I
brought it
have
up again because I didn't want to offend you or insult you further. I thought maybe I insulted you.
I have a mock-up somewhere. I'll try and get the I have no. There's a mock-up somewhere of the change. No, I love it. But anyway, yeah. So perhaps that one day, I don't mean to be ambiguous in the show, everybody. Sorry about that. But one
He's
day,
sorry, everyone.
I'm
He's sorry.
sorry. I'm sorry. Can I tell you what I
He's
did
going to
on
know
Monday
his
night?
processes.
Process. I get you're not the first to talk about process versus process
I'm
with
not
me.
making fun, by the way. I love it.
I know. Oh yeah. The Canadian part is a part. And by the way, there are people who work for Worldwide Pants that are still actively working for Worldwide Pants that are totally fine with the Letterman podcast. I've checked into it, and they're okay with it. They
You
are.
wouldn't be operating at 100 and X amount of episodes if it were a big problem.
Exactly.
But when it comes to the people that I would be trying to impress within that
Yeah.
organization,
Yeah. Sometimes you swing and sometimes you miss. Can I tell you what I did on Monday night? I think you'll like this. I really think you'll like this. Can I tell you
all
what
right.
I did in Seattle
Yeah,
Monday night?
you're priming the pump, but sure.
Oh well, no, I do. Does this mean anything to you? Do you know
I need my
the Gold
glasses.
Rush, Charlie Chaplin?
Oh yeah, I remember
Okay.
that.
Okay.
But
Um,
I don't know anything about it. It's well, obviously a silent
yeah.
short, right?
F- it's a feature. It's
Oh, okay.
an hour long, I think, an hour and a bit long.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's one of Charlie Chaplin's most famous
I
movies.
didn't I haven't seen a lot of that stuff, but
Yeah.
I do celebrate. I like it. I like the history.
Okay. So the reason I'm hanging out with hanging out with Steve Weiner on Monday night, who was perhaps not the same level of cinephile that Rick was, but it was something that they bond over. Steve Weiner, of course, worked for a season and a half on late night, but it was the very first one. Discovered Calvert DeForest. The
Oh,
glass
that's right.
breaking. The
Yeah,
glass
of course.
breaking was his gag. And a few other parts of the show that were taken to
That
the very end.
became integral, yeah.
Very much so. Thank you for that. Yes. But also great friends with Rick. Rick introduced us and has wrote for Robert Klein and a bunch of other things. And now he writes essays for Criterion. He's a
Wow.
cinephile, and he and Rick are very, that was one of the things that connected them. Well, they in Seattle at the Paramount Theater, which is well over 100 years old, they have a thing called Silent Movie Mondays once a quarter. And what they will do is they will play one of these restored classics and have a an orchestra doing the audio of the silent film live. And it's a
Mhm.
beautiful experience. And Steve was flown out not only to introduce the movie, but then also to do a Q&A as an expert about the
Beautiful.
movie afterwards.
Beautiful.
And yeah, so Monday night I was in Seattle doing that with him and George Meyer, who is a legendary writer for late night.
What did you do? What was your role? How did you get involved in this?
I'm Steve's friend, and I said, "You're coming to Seattle. I can drive down to Seattle." And he's
Oh,
like,
okay.
"Oh," and I
I'm
said,
sorry.
I want to be your entourage. I want to be with you
Got
while
it.
you
Yeah,
do
okay.
this." And
The we threw me there. I didn't mean to. I didn't
no,
mean to. Please continue.
the we throws a lot of people that word. No, so and George,
I know what you mean, but that's not what I meant. I was not trying to make that joke.
I
But
know. I
I
just
know what
thought
you
it was
mean.
I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. It came out.
Maybe
I'll
this is a
foul the
Mike
ball
Chisholm
off. I
thing.
have to.
This may be something you just do. Rest on the comfort of the royal we.
But I got to meet George Meyer, and
I
George,
thought
who
maybe you were introducing a thing or something. When you said we and we got to do this thing, I thought maybe you were like, part of the
no,
thing.
no, no,
Okay.
no, no, no.
Okay. You're
I
there
got to watch.
supporting your friend.
I got to watch Steve in his glory, and literally, this film historian who was there talking to him about it, and he knows everything about this movie, and it was just
Mm.
fascinating to watch. And I was sitting beside George Meyer. We were watching this because he knows Steve well, and I mean George Meyer Letterman, the Saturday Night Live, ran The Simpsons. Some have said that is responsible really for the voice of The Simpsons. You know, early on, the tone of it.
Wow.
It was just a really really cool experience, and I just want to give a shout out to my boy Steve Weiner. And again, every time I talk to Steve, I think about Rick a lot.
Uh,
And tonight, our
Connection.
conversation, you made me think about Rick a lot again, because you brought back. It's almost 3 years for this thing, you know, and
For this show or for Rick's
for this
how
show.
long
Well,
how
no,
long has Rick been?
Rick will
Two
be
years?
two years on March 10th. On March 10th, it'll be 2 years since he passed. Um,
And
I
congratulations on 3 years on the show, but I'm sorry about Rick for 2 years. It's a I don't know how to feel about that exchange.
well, I'll
It was
connect
good
it. It
stuff
was
and bad stuff.
it was during an episode of the show that I actually realized, like real time with a guest, that I had been doing the show longer with Rick gone than Rick here.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that fucked up my mind for a while.
I
It
know
was
what
a
you mean.
weird thing
I was
because every
36 years old when I was with Nicole, and it was the first year that my dad was gone longer than he was here.
yeah,
And then it's like that forever on. So obviously it's the same kind of a similar.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a milestone. Yeah, I think it's just something you think about when you hit it. Doesn't stay with you, but like, oh wow, it's an eye opener.
yeah, and there are some times that I I feel there are times at the show that I feel rudderless sometimes. I'm getting past it
Oh.
now, but when Rick was here, I had a rudder. He gave me notes almost every episode,
Oh.
and then suddenly he's not there. 2 weeks before he passed, I mean, we're on Alex Bennett's show every week. We did a panel show with Alex Bennett. I mean, I've got the
Right.
footage, and Rick was just gushing about. He was gushing about Felicia Collins' episode
Oh
when I had
yeah.
her on, and he's just
She's the
gushing about
best.
it.
I
I
just was
love
on
her.
her Instagram earlier today because I love her so much.
It
She's
looks
doing
like
something down at that wherever you went and saw Will and Paul.
at
She's
the
doing
bitter end.
cutting room. Oh, bitter. Oh,
Bitter
maybe
end.
they're at the cutting room.
They're at the cutting room doing the Sly and the Family Stone thing, and
Yes, that's
we
what I
were
was thinking of.
just
But
talking
also
about it.
doing the bitter
Yeah,
end.
yeah. Actually, I threw out to her. I just said, "Hey, let's get you and Will on here at the same time and talk about some of these gigs." And she's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So that's actually something we're currently working on to happen for a future episode. Um,
I obviously love everybody in that band, but Nicole loved Felicia so much because she was so blown up. She didn't know. She couldn't see the forest for the trees. But when I took Nicole to go see the world's most dangerous band right after in here in LA, right after the late show had ended, like a
yep.
year after the late show ended, they did a little tour and they did LA. And I can't remember how or whatever, but I ended up getting us front row center tickets, and we were in the experience. And Nicole was blown away by a couple facets of it, and the biggest one was Felicia Collins. She had no idea how goddamn talented Felicia Collins is, and I was like,
Hmm.
they're all insanely talented, but she is really something. That voice is phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. And her ability to
Obviously, her
mimic.
musical ability is
Oh
insane as
yeah,
well, but I mean, I just am blown away by all of her talent.
she's fantastic. Well, and here's one of the cool things about the show that I love. I've gotten to tell some of these people that I appreciate so much. One of the things that I appreciate about them, one of the things with Felicia, is I got a chance to tell her, hey, just so you know, Felicia, my wife Candy thinks you might be the coolest human being on the planet. She thinks you are the coolest, and I got a chance to tell Felicia that, and as you know, there's a special kind of joy when you're able to meet some of these people that you have affection for, and you're able to actually express some of these things that normally you would just be a fleeting thought, perhaps. And that was a really, I love being able to say that. I've been able to say that, and Candy does think Felicia is one of the coolest human beings walking the planet, and she is. She's so badass in so many ways. I love Felicia. She's
I
great.
like people who are, authentic. She's very authentic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Very, very much so. Um, I have one question that I've wanted to ask you. It's not to do with any of the stuff we've been talking about.
Mhm.
Have you watched the Steve Martin documentary?
No,
You haven't.
not because I don't want to see it. In
Yep.
fact, I think it's on Apple TV, so I
It
already
is.
have it.
Yep.
When it came out was not a good time. So we literally just missed the cycle of it all.
Right.
It came up in my queue the other day because I just watched the Gary Shandling one, which I bought and own.
Hmm.
So it's around. I'll get to it. I haven't yet.
Okay.
I mean, I celebrate Steve Martin. he was the host of the first SNL I ever went to go be in the audience of. It was
Really?
him and Eric Clapton. Hell of a show. I swear to God, Steve. And speaking of front row center,
Oh
me
my
and my
God.
girlfriend at the time sitting front row center in 8H. Because I, had worked downstairs at Conan and told the guy, whatever the
Yeah.
heck, I kind of talked my way into it. And they were like,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead. Sound familiar? And yeah, Steve Martin and Eric Clapton. And it was also it must have been a season premiere because I remember watching them. It was the old set. Do you remember the old set that kind of had
Yeah.
it was yellow
Yep.
for and the just two brown doors. There was no
Yep.
steps or anything like that.
Yep.
It was like from the 80s into the 90s
Yep.
until the Will Ferrell era.
Yep.
Um, it used to say Saturday Night Live on the like the top part of the
The
house.
old circle
if
logo.
the set was a house, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So in the center of that, we watched them spray paint like with a stencil the 15 in for the. Oh, it must have been maybe it was 20.
No,
When
I
did it
think it
start?
was
75.
I feel like it was 15. I think
It
I
was
know
75.
exactly.
So this would have been before 95. So yeah, maybe it'd been 20 for me.
Oh, it might have been 20. Yeah, it might have been 20.
Yeah.
Okay. And Eric Clapton, my goodness, that's a
But
hell
no,
of a show.
that's too late. No, but it must have been. It had to have been 20.
Do you know if Eric
I
Clapton
wouldn't have
did
been there in
wonderful?
1990.
Did Eric Clapton do Wonderful Tonight? Do you know if he did that song? If that was one of the songs he did?
That's the right time.
Yeah.
It was it would have been the time frame when like Unplugged would have come out like a couple years before.
Oh, so
Like he might
Layla,
have done
okay,
Tears in
yeah.
Heaven or something like that.
Okay.
I can't remember what he played. I didn't care.
Yeah.
That's the saddest part is like I'm so much more impressed that I saw Eric Clapton now than I was that night.
Right.
I was there for everything else.
Yeah, well, of course. And it's Steve Martin on SNL. That's legendary even at that time. Never mind where we are now. And
Yeah.
actually maybe one of the last things that we can kind of talk about now you and I love that you and I
Go
can
ahead.
just do this.
I know what you're going to ask.
Of course.
Throw it out there.
Are you excited for it? Are you excited for SNL
What?
50?
Oh, I didn't know what you were going to ask.
Oh,
I
what'd you
am,
think
but
I
I
was
got
gonna
more
ask?
excited about it right before if I'd seen the movie. I thought you were asking if I'd seen the movie.
Oh, gotcha. No, I mean, yeah, that too. But SNL 50 coming. I loved SNL 40. I still think about it and can't believe that behemoth of a special happened. It was tremendous. I'm very curious about what SNL 50 is going to look like.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. Um, yeah, I don't know. It should be very interesting. That was a very big blowout. I don't know how you top it. I feel like the only way to top it is it's going to be it's going to be a shit show. Is the way I say. I think this 50 is going to be a shit show. I don't know why I'm picturing. You remember the Cheers finale with Jay Leno at the,
I sure
at the
do.
bar?
We
So
all
for
got
some
drunk.
reason, I'm picturing that for this one. It feels like all bets are off. Also, everyone thought Lauren would be gone by now. You know what I mean? Like he's still there. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. It'll be great. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Wish I was there.
Yeah.
Wish I worked on it all this time. I did. Speaking of documentaries, I just watched the Jerry Springer documentary. Did you see that one yet?
I watched it. Yep.
I mean, it's sad and disturbing, but also, I knew a lot of that stuff already. And it was very interesting to me that the producer they're following for the majority of this documentary is actually the son of the production designer from Saturday Night Live. So you've got some guy who's doing like the highest pinnacle of what television can be. And you've got the son doing like the lowest of low, just trying to get by. You know what I mean? It's a job. Oh, I found that very, very interesting.
My takeaway from that was I had so much empathy for that guy. Like that was the guy that I had.
And he did the right thing in the end.
He totally.
Sorry to cut you off.
No. That was exactly right. It's exactly right. That's how I saw it too. And I mean, however, are you going to get your father's approval being in the business that you're, and I mean, again, Springer at that time, #1 show. It was crazy. It was, talking about a behemoth. That's what Springer was during that time in that heyday. But man,
this will bring me back to the movie. And then there's your segue to close it out. Everything you just said is right, but it wasn't about like, the whole, the highest echelon versus the lowest echelon. The lowest echelon was the highest rated show. You're right.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to what it takes to make a TV show, there still to this day isn't anything like Saturday Night Live. What they pull off every single week on Saturday Night Live is impossible. and they have done it every week for 50 or however many shows for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to describe, but as I loved the movie, I didn't think I was going to like it. I only finally saw it recently. I thought, having worked there, there's no way to get it. I saw some behind the scenes stuff when they were, shooting and recreating the set, and they were explaining things that they had done. And I'm looking at it and I go, this is like the firehouse from the goddamn Ghostbusters movie. You're saying all this stuff, but it's not over there in the frame. And I was like hesitant to, I thought I wouldn't like it. I watched it, loved it. I've watched it twice. I would say if there was a critique to make, it would be that in all of that calamity, if anybody hasn't seen the movie, the Saturday Night Movie is literally the 90 minutes leading up to the first Saturday Night Live in a real-ish time. It's not exactly, but it's like in a real-ish.
I thought it was like 24, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I don't know. But my point is, the only thing I would say, my only critique would be that as crazy as it is in all of that, it's so much more so in real life. Like, this was a slowed down movie version of what happens every week, let alone the first week, which I was not there for and can't even imagine. So it kind of, if anything, it's a testament to really what SNL is as a machine, which is why I think my standards are so high when it comes to this bullshit.
Yeah.
This is also important to me because I learned from those types of people at 30 Rock where it was the best of the best, the top of their game.
Yep.
And you had to be in order to survive in that environment. And it's funny how the movie gets that right too. The difference between the creatives and the show people versus the NBC crew people, the old bitter guys, they got that so well. Because all of those guys, all of the naysayers in the beginning who weren't helping with the bricks and everything, those were all the guys that were telling me Conan it's not going to happen. This will be the last week. You know what I mean?
It's precious to me that you feel that way about that show. That's a huge endorsement for how Jason Reitman got it right. I love that. I love that so much. I appreciate you.
Also, the biggest thing I would say about that too, I think the casting, I was worried about how am I going to watch somebody else be Chevy Chase? How am I going to watch someone else be Dan Aykroyd, Jane Curtin, and so on? That's the easiest disbelief to suspend. The casting is so good in that movie. The cast they chose are so good individually and as a whole, that it was very easy to believe the environment.
Yeah, I had the same worry, and the suspension of disbelief for it left me 20 seconds into the movie. I say, oh, that's okay. And I just accepted it. I got to the point where I, saw it as each person was introduced on the screen. I was like, oh, I accepted it immediately because I think the pacing of it was so compelling. I think you had to accept it because
you keep thinking the movie's going to start and you realize it started 20 minutes ago.
Yes.
It happens before you. And it happened, by the way, it was done and I watched it again a couple nights later and the same thing happened. I go, oh, I can't wait for this to start. Oh, it started. It started before I even knew it. We're already in it, and it's not going to let me go until we go live.
Yep.
It's really, really neat from a storytelling standpoint.
Yeah, I totally
very
agree.
impressive. There are things I don't like. There are super easy fixes of things I used to look at all the time that I'm like, oh, why isn't that there? They did such a great job of everything around it. Why is that one thing missing? Things like that. Which, of course, that was my complaint with the Ghostbusters movie, but I'm a very small audience on that one.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That is the stuff that is your unique perspective on these things that you love so much. Again, because, is it Dave that you worship? Well, it's kind of like Kathleen Ankers that you worship in some ways, like, and
it's the art that Dave was so good at.
Yeah.
And it's the unseen stuff. People are following the numbers. And the magic is not there. That's not where you'll find it. It's in between all of the metrics you're looking, all the boxes you're trying to check.
Yeah.
The magic that you're trying to recreate is in between them. It'll never fit in a box. You can't put it there.
No.
Don't get me started on that AI. And I'll tell you another thing.
We are old
coming
men
through. Where are my reading glasses?
My bifocals are almost here. I'm so excited. We are becoming old men, and it's interesting seeing some of these things from our perspective now. And I remember I remember the conversation. Conan's referenced it a couple of times. The conversation where Johnny said this, and I believe Bob Hope said it as well.
Ooh,
When, talking about show business, and they're like, "What are you talking about? Show business is gone. These people are gone. These people are, who they thought was show business.
right,
The Jackie Gleasons all the
right.
masters are gone." And it's weird.
I remember when Rickles went, somebody said that was the last one. I think it was Bob Newhart personally, but from that, because he was more recent and he was the last one for me. But
Mhm.
of that generation, like they're all gone.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and feeling that with what my and I remember somebody saying it was to Johnny or to Bob Hoper saying, "Well, what are you talking about? There's Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks and all these other people who they thought was their kind of show business, but it's not." And now that's happening in our in to the people that we look up to, and it's interesting.
Uh,
It's interesting becoming old. It's just interesting. It's an interesting journey. I'm sure feeling it sometimes when it comes to perspective, and but I've decided to say I'm going to enjoy the ride very, very much, while the little
yeah.
ones look up at me and they say, "You're just an old man." Yeah, no, 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 no. Come watch. Come watch Billie Eilish. And by the way, I love Billie Eilish. I think she's fantastic. I really, really do. But they worship these megastars that I just don't see in the same
Oh,
regard as these megastars that, in my opinion, are these influences to me.
yeah. I mean, because they're not ours. They're not our idols.
Yeah.
They're the next generation's idols.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you. I definitely hear you. For me, it's not a recent problem. Gary Shandling, Norm Macdonald. I
Yeah.
mean, those
Yeah.
that's when it started for me. With Robin Williams before that,
Yeah.
that's when it started for me for the greats of our idols, our
Yep.
idols that we look up to.
Yeah. And that's what it's happening more and more and more. And to the point where you're going, who's left? And there still are some, don't get me wrong,
Well,
but
luckily, there's a lot left,
yeah.
but I definitely take your point.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've still got a lot of time.
I appreciate you
I
saying
haven't
that. I
heard that
appreciate that
buzzer yet.
optimism. I appreciate the
I mean
optimism.
it. I mean it.
Yeah.
The world is my world anyway is changing, and it's getting brighter. Not that it's getting bright, but it's getting
Yep.
brighter. I think because it was dark for so long. So
Yeah.
I'm a little more, even though I don't know what to do, and I'm like one day at a time, literally one day at a time.
Mhm.
It's getting a little more brighter and more optimistic than I was a few months ago.
Yeah.
This whole thing still sucks, but I can see how my world is different now and how that will be good for me and whatever we all do together in the future, me and the
And this
community
is
and I.
another one of those moments where somebody is going through something or whatever, and they're looking, and if they've watched your last episode and maybe the one before it, and now they see you now, if they're like, okay, I'm not alone. And it actually, it gets better, might be a little too cliche and a little incorrect on that, but we move on. And other lights show up, maybe not as bright as the ones we just lost, but other lights are there, and it does go on. And I appreciate
I
you
hope you're
being
right
able to
about
say
that.
that. Yeah.
I hope you're right about that. That's Nicole's parents. I still talk to them very regularly, and that was a comment they made the other day, the last time we talked over the weekend.
Yeah.
Um, they hadn't, whatever they'd been watching the shows. They weren't fully caught up, but the mom's comment was, I said, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what this thing is anymore. She was my reason for all of it. And
Hmm.
the mom seemed to think that giving other people a safe place to talk about things that you can't necessarily always talk about, what she described was more of like your he cast type of situation than
Yep.
my little late night playset here. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter. And I think I used to get caught up in the details.
Hmm.
And I think you get caught up in the details.
I
And I
do.
don't think the details matter at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah. Don't hold on so
And I
tight.
think, yeah. And Nicole was always trying to teach me that. But, a creative loves all their little details and they got
Yeah.
to, oh, I've got an option here. I'm going to do all my little details,
Well, it's
you
the
know,
perspective, and to hear that every once in a while. Hey, are you holding on too tight? Even just as a litmus test. Am I
just a
holding on
check
too
in.
tight?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great.
You answer. I don't even care.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. I love you, man, and I'm glad
Has
that
this been the longest podcast ever? I feel like I really talked for too much.
no, I believe Matt Roberts is the longest one. We went over 3 hours
Yeah.
with Matt. I think that was the
Oh
longest
wow.
one.
Okay.
No,
Great.
we're no, no, no.
But this is what, 2 hours? How long has this been?
This is 2 hours. I don't even know. You and I might have
Sorry.
actually gone longer on one on a previous episode as well. But we had a lot to catch up on. We had a lot to to talk about, and I'm grateful that we've had this moment. Again, this morning it just kind of hit me like a thunderbolt. Hey, I wonder if he's got a hole in his schedule tonight. And it was literally, if the universe wills it, we can do this tonight. And it worked out. And I'm very, very happy that it did. Thank you for
I
being
really
you.
appreciate you having me. Yeah, thank you for being you as well. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate your audience having me. They're always so nice in the comments when I'm here, and despite the name or any kind of feathers you may have ruffled with it, I appreciate that you're doing a really good thing here, and I definitely support you. You know that.
Oh,
I
oh,
hope you know
oh
that. I want
God,
you to know that.
are you kidding me? Like the support you have given me and the insights and all of that, you will never know how much you'll never. I say I appreciate you, and maybe I say it so much that it becomes almost even watered down. I need to say that you have no idea how much I love and appreciate you and Nicole, of course. But God damn, I appreciate you so much, Jay. And I can't wait to, I'm going to try and massage my schedule on Tuesday night so I can at least somehow take part, whatever that looks like, in what your new normal is going to become. Because I'm so excited that uh, you're at this place where you're getting in front of the camera again, and I'm so grateful for it. And I know a lot of people have reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jay's put out shows again." Like Rob Cates and some of these other people are so
Oh
excited that you're
wow.
doing it.
Thank
And
you.
and
That's it.
yeah,
Thanks to
and
you guys, to Rob and anybody who has that. That's really, really awesome. I
Rupert
really
and Irene
appreciate that.
like love you and
Oh
are so
God, thank
grateful.
you.
Yeah, yeah. So
I
thanks for
really
being
thought they'd
you.
all drop off when Nicole wasn't here, so it means the world that they're still here.
Yeah, no. Um, let's
And
close
that the
up
audience is
this.
growing. That's the weird thing,
Yeah.
coming back, and then it's all actually happening now. Like, we tried so hard for so long, and then you stop trying, and they're all like, "Ah, perfect, exactly
Hmm.
what we wanted." What
Hmm.
the hell? Life doesn't make any sense. What's the algorithm?
Yeah, what's
Somebody help me.
yeah, yeah. Hey, you know it. You know the algorithm. You've got it. You've already mastered it, and you know it. Live it while you got it, and that's what we're doing. In this weird world that we are. Live it while you got it. This has been another episode of the Letterman podcast with Mike Chisholm. That's Jay Ryan. Late night playset at Porsche Life 111 is the
Yeah,
where you follow the
please,
111.
yeah, please follow Porsche Life 111. We're trying to actually grow all our social media, which is really for a first time. So Late Night Playset is the show. Please like and subscribe.
Yep.
We're trying to put out good stuff. Write a comment and let us know suggestions. Like, the whole world is a suggestion box to me right now. So I am wide open, more than I've ever been.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. This has been another episode of the Letterman podcast with Mike Chisholm. Coincidentally, I am Mike Chisholm. Thank you and good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Overcoat and underpants.